Hello, ladies and gentlemen, back again on Leicester Live for another episode. This one's going to be a little bit of a gossipy episode, but that's all right. We're all good. I don't think it's going to take too long because I'm not one to gossip, so you ain't heard this from me. I just wanted to share what I was told about this business of the crypto crash so you can make up your own mind about what it means and whether it was a thing. If you've been watching charts, you know we're somewhere back in the green. Things are looking good. There's a number of reasons for this. There's a lot more buy pressure. People seriously were buying the dip. Also, the stable coins, the gas tokens, everything's kind of recovering a little bit. We're getting back to some basic stability, which is always good. How long it'll last, we still don't know, but enjoy it while it lasts if you have projects that you are concerned about. I will say just kind of ride this wave, and let's see how it goes, and hopefully it's not going to be going back in the red anytime soon. But the reason I decided to host this now was I heard some information about the cause of the crypto crash, and I suspected you might want to hear some of this stuff. This circulated on social media. It seems like somebody did some pretty deep analysis about this business. I don't know these people that were mentioned in this. It seemed like there was other stuff happening behind the scenes, but it got me thinking this might also affect other projects where they don't lock the liquidity or where the devs have unrealistically large wallets. And so I wanted to kind of go through what we got here and get any feedback, comments, questions, or anything. Feel free to leave them in the chat, and we will try to get you an answer as we go through the show. And of course, many people just watch this after the fact, so if you didn't get to the live, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll catch it up when I review after the fact. So this crypto crash, right? This has been going on longer than the one day. This didn't just start yesterday. Some people think it just started yesterday. It did not just start yesterday. This was a longer thing. This has been going on for a while where we saw things in the red for an extended period of time and couldn't understand why. It turns out that there may be something more to this than just Bitcoin and Ethereum and sentiment and taxes. And it's actually a larger potential problem that's going to affect cryptocurrency for the foreseeable future. If you aren't familiar with two organizations, BlackRock and Citadel, I encourage you to do some research. There actually was a YouTuber who did very extensive research and confirmed these two organizations actually own the vast majority of the companies that are backing your 401ks, your IRAs, and all that, your investments, your stocks. And Twitter came up on the deck as one of these companies where they own a majority stake in some of these companies. Well, this person had done some digging and said that these two organizations were basically requesting changes, policy changes, process changes that were pushing woke methodologies forward. And it was that these two companies were largely responsible for the decline of Twitter. The get rid of the president and start banning all this, but not ban this, and put these messages on this, but not on these. And it was that there was a directive given starting from these companies trickling down to try to push a, quote, social agenda forward. There's this whole big, I don't want to say conspiracy because it's been proven. There's data around this. But there's this whole big narrative around these two organizations that I encourage you to go research at your leisure because it's very intriguing. However, this recent a couple of weeks to a couple of months of red activity got people digging to try to figure out, was there something more to this? Remember, it started with the decline of Bitcoin. Then we saw progressive declines of BNB, of course, Ethereum, Avalanche, Polygon, and with the main tokens declining, we saw that the other cryptocurrencies that tied to those were also declining. What we didn't realize at the time was that there might have been something else behind all this. So this organization, and this all floated around first Telescam, and I was sent an image of it. After they did the digging, here's what they said. Quote, BlackRock and Citadel borrowed 100,000 Bitcoin from Gemini. Gemini is a different organization that buys and sells cryptocurrency. It's an exchange. They, quote, they swapped 25,000 of that Bitcoin into UST, which is the, quote, stable coin for Terra. And that UST, of course, is associated with Luna. Quote, this is done quietly in anticipation of an attack. So I mentioned in my last episode that I did online on the stream that there were some theories floating around that this was a coordinated effort, a coordinated attack on Terra and Luna, as opposed to just a dump from investors. Quote, when the time was right, they called up Do Kwon at the Terra Foundation. Do Kwon is apparently the big guy. This is one of the guys I don't know anything about, but I've seen some pictures and videos of him. I don't know anything about him, never met him, never heard of him, never talked to him. Quote, they said they wanted to sell a lot of their Bitcoin to get UST. As it was a large trade, they told him they didn't want to move the market and asked if he would like to buy their large block of Bitcoin at a discount for UST. So to translate what they're trying to transact, they were trying to get a vast majority of UST, which is the stablecoin now, because it's not stable, it's unpegged, but a vast majority of the stablecoin, and in exchange, this Do Kwon would get a large batch of Bitcoin. Now, if you are trying to do an investment in certain currencies as a backing, liquidity or a backing source of money, Bitcoin is where you would go in the decent space. So it makes sense that you would want to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you have to support your reserves. Why this was weird is to have these BlackRock and Citadel cats go directly to this lead of a cryptocurrency. And then what happens next is a bit head shaking, which was, quote, Do Kwon took the bait. He gave them a huge chunk of UST, thus lowering the UST liquidity significantly. In other words, Do Kwon apparently drained the liquidity himself, took it straight out of the liquidity pool to give this UST over to these two firms. This is highly unusual because if they said they didn't want to move the market, there would have been no way not to do that. You're going to move the market no matter what because you're shifting money around. If they do it as a purchase without the discount, then there wouldn't have been any market move. It's the discount that caused that significant first dip that Luna started experiencing a couple days ago. They said, okay, we'll get the money off the liquidity pool because that's the only place we can go to get as much UST as you want. Now, the reason this is kind of strange is Luna, the token, is actually an unlimited supply. It can mint more tokens as it needs to. UST, as I understand it, cannot. So it would have made better sense to try to do this by way of the Luna token, which can mint more tokens to meet their need, and then simply do a sell for the UST so it's a clean transaction. But now you're not going straight to the liquidity pool. So that was problem number one that they called out here with this guy, Do Kwon, pulling straight out of liquidity. That surprised me. Quote, at that point, BlackRock and Citadel dumped all the Bitcoin and UST. So basically, they still held on to the Bitcoin. This Do Kwon dude sent UST from the liquidity to them without claiming his Bitcoin first, which I don't know why you would do that. There's no store that would do that. Quote, causing massive slippage and triggering a cascade of forced selling in both assets. So you saw a lot of sell pressure over the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, last couple of months, and nobody knew where it was coming from, and Bitcoin seemed to be extremely affected. What we also saw, though, was other situations where Bitcoin was being shorted. We saw Bitcoin was struggling to maintain its position. We saw Bitcoin struggling to hold the resistance points. We saw Bitcoin in a very bad way and didn't understand why, because there was enough general interest in Bitcoin to defray what was going on. I also reported on one of my previous, this has actually been on the podcast, not on the channel, where miners, M-I-N-E-R-S, were stockpiling Bitcoin that they would mine, meaning they knew something was going on or was about to happen. And so instead of selling it or giving it to the exchanges, they were just holding on to it. Now that all ties together as to, okay, something's going on here and don't know what the heck's happening here. Quote, the real problem was that BlackRock and Citadel knew that Anchor, which is a different deal, which holds a lot of Luna, was a Ponzi scheme. They offered 20% staking APY. So Anchor, holding this Luna, was apparently allowing staking, and then they had a sky-high APY for staking. The sky-high APY in of itself is not necessarily a problem. Where it would be a problem is if they don't have a solution for what happens in situations like this. If they're not able to deal with that situation, you're going to run into some issues. That's what it looks like has happened. This crash would trigger more withdrawals than Anchor can repay. Of course, So basically, as people are getting sketchy and nervous, they're going to get out. They're going to withdraw their stakes and they're going to remove it. So the stability that the staking was offering is no longer there because people are nervous and sketchy and skittish and they don't know what's going to happen here. That makes perfect sense. Quote, these forced withdrawals and selling would trigger a massive sell-off in Luna, thus further breaking the dollar peg and not wrecking the market further. So of course, UST is supposed to be a stable coin, meaning it's supposed to be pegged to the US dollar, means you have to have enough of the currency in order to support the pegging. If you don't, it's a big problem because many assets are then backed by that cryptocurrency. Quote, BlackRock and Citadel can now buy the Bitcoin back cheaply to repay the loan and pocket the difference. So when you do margin trading, you are taking essentially a loan. And as you take a loan, that loan has to be paid back at some point. The problem is that many of these companies, what they end up doing is they borrow too much, then they can't get the money from somewhere else, and then their assets get liquidated. What this is speculating, and I don't have proof of any of this, is that BlackRock and Citadel worked together, conspired essentially, to tank the price of Bitcoin by devaluing it with this illicit trade, which crashes Bitcoin's price, which allows them to buy the Bitcoin back from where they sold it cheaper than what they sold it for and pocket the difference in money. So they make a profit, but they also are able to pay back the loan. No harm, no foul. It's almost like a flash loan attack in cryptocurrency. Very similar, but now by big, regular, fortune valued companies, investment companies. These are above the board companies, but they know that they're going to get off scot clean because cryptocurrency is largely unregulated. It's not like they could never pull this off on the stock market and get away with it, at least. Quote, billions of longs and Bitcoin were wiped out. Longs, of course, are people that would have gone and did an investment on a long play. So they expect that the long is going to do X, Y. It's going to go long. It's going to do X, Y, Z. And because it didn't, because in the short it crapped, they lost out. They got basically trashed because of whatever this is. If it's legit that this happened the way that it was described, it basically trashed a lot of middle-class people. And then, of course, quote, this was pure market manipulation. So the working theory is that these two firms, who are legitimate mainstream non-cryptocurrency firms, got involved in cryptocurrency because they had a loan out through an exchange and they needed to basically make good on the exchange and they couldn't. So instead of trying to do that the legit way, they illicitly did a trade, and this Do Kwon was the mark and used whatever liquidity was in the pool, which he shouldn't have had access to take out, to then essentially pump and dump it, because there will be an initial pump because it's a purchase request and then a dump because it's sold at a discount, what I mean. But you're doing it all under the table. You're doing it in disregard of the investors. Then you got staking pools that are supposed to help stabilize it, and they can't because there's no liquidity behind it. And nobody knows that this was valid, that this truly happened. It's 100%. Nobody really knows what went on here. All we know is that this was a bad situation all the way around. And it's possible that this situation has stemmed back weeks or months when it actually started, not the yesterday or the day before when it looked like it started, when it got worse, but rather further back when we started seeing the crap out of Bitcoin and Ethereum, that it might have been just part of this whole cascade and it all tied together. The reason people are kind of upset about this is that all it's going to do is cause the United States government in particular to start trying to put down regulations because they think that it's all scams and it's all sketchy. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have some kind of regulation against this, but there's no real way to easily regulate it other than documentation. In the regular stock world, they would have had to document these transactions and they would have to submit them to the SEC. They would have had to be accountable to, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and they had to put that forward. Here, they weren't required to put anything forward. So it's all under the table. Nobody knows anything. The people who should really be pissed off, though, are the investors of this Terra Foundation, any of the tokens, UST, Luna, doesn't matter. They should all be pissed off because this Do Kwon idiot, if it's true, he basically just took the liquidity and made this illicit transaction. It could only have been greed related, could only have been, because he could have just done a regular transaction and been better off. And it actually would have helped the investors because it would have constrained the inventory and further raised the price for everybody else who was holding. My theory about why he did it this way is he knew that if he did it that way, he would have ended up with a lot of millionaires who would have dumped off the thing and would have crapped anyway. He was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. That's my theory. If what I'm reading is true and correct, that this BlackRock and the Citadel conspired to crap the price of this UST simply to make good on a Bitcoin loan, and then ended up crapping out the whole rest of the industry as a result. Number one, it means it's going to happen again. If that's what happened, this will happen again. Number two, any project that is banking on Bitcoin as its backing, that is relying on BNB, Ethereum, or anything else for its streams of revenue and does not have farming of different things and other ways to optimize their backing liquidity. If they don't have something else in place, those are going to be ones that absolutely die in crypto, because that means this would happen again and they're going to be brought to their knees again. It would happen again, brought to their knees again. Here's the ironic point though. Saitama's jump has been astronomical since this happened, which means people were waiting for the extreme dip so they could buy back in. Not that Saitama's doing anything good or right. They were just waiting for the best dip. They wanted to go as low as it could before they bought back in so they could try to recoup losses. Cool. If anybody was interested in Saitama, that's a good thing for them, right? SHIB didn't have as much of a jump. ID certainly didn't. Many of these other ones didn't, but everything else is in the green for now. We have to watch. Time will tell if this truly was a coordinated attack, because if it was, this is going to happen again. And I will tell you, make sure you diversify your portfolio, and this is why. I'm not even just talking the Ethereums and the Bitcoins of the world. Find projects that look like they're doing it right, that are stable, that are worth your time, and they're not going away in the short term because they're putting strong utilities out there, and they look like they care about the investors. Not like this idiot where he just wanted to give your money away, because that's your money in the liquidity pool. Give your money away for greed, because that's all it is for greed. That's all I had to tell you on this business here with this fiasco that happened over the last couple of days, that it looks like this was actually a longer play. This happened a long time ago, started, and it just hit a fever pitch as of yesterday and brought things to their knees. And now we're seeing extreme corrections because now prices are jumping. So people who bought dips, as I did, people who bought dips are kind of cheering. The problem is we don't know if it's going to crap out again, and that's a huge risk. So be careful. Be careful you're going to invest. Be careful what you invest in. Don't get overly tempted. Don't rush in. Don't YOLO. Please do not YOLO in anything, because you simply don't know. When you've got something like this potentially happening with big time player, big time billionaire companies behind the scenes potentially conspiring on one project, that means they don't care about the low level investors at all. All they care about is their own bottom line, just like in the stock market. And you, as the investor in the project, if you just, as all these projects keep telling you, hold, you're falling for the trap. It's no different than a honeypot if you think about it. Just so happens that it's not a malicious honeypot, but it's still a honeypot. You're trapped in something because they tell you to stay in it, and all of a sudden something like this happens beyond your control. The dev knew it because they were greedy, and next thing you know, all your money's gone. Please do not YOLO in any project. Try to find projects that are actually doing something. Utility. They're going to be around the long haul. Look at the liquidity pools. Make sure that they're serious business. Make sure they're acting like serious business. Try to find those. They're hard to find. I would stay absolutely away from the dog coins as much as possible. They're not going to last. With stuff like this, there's no way. There's no way. And I say that, I have a tiny bag, very tiny bag of, say, Volt Inu, for example. Volt Inu was struggling with this. Was struggling. Not because it's a bad project. I think it's a decent project. I don't think it's a great project, but it's a decent project. But again, it was never built to sustain something like this. It was never built to predict something like this. Those are hard to find. Very hard to find. I've only ever found 3 or 4 of them. And of those, even those had some issue. They just didn't completely trash out, and then they recovered very nicely, or they gave me passive income in other ways. So I was able to mitigate my losses. And that's all I look for now, is the ones that are mitigating my losses, because I expect a loss of some kind. Anyway, I just thought this was an interesting read. It was a very challenging yesterday. A lot of people were very upset. A lot of people were frustrated. I saw suicide claims. I hope that didn't go past. I saw some murder threats. I hope that didn't go down. I saw a lot of crazy stuff. I saw people, KSI, who's a YouTuber, he's a personality. KSI lost $3 million on Terra Luna. $3 million. His $3 million went down to $100. Now, mind you, he can afford it. He's a rapper. He's a boxer. He does his YouTube show. He makes a bunch of money on that, and he has endorsements, and he's got all this stuff. And he's a gamer. He does streaming gaming. So he's got money to throw away. But when you have a celebrity who believes in his product to the point they toss that much money in it, and they have 3 million and they leave it in there, this tells you, there was nothing wrong with Luna itself. Just fundamentally, it was sound because it convinced a lot of people that it must be good. Whatever this was seemed like an external attack. And then now celebrities were affected by it. The positive of this is that we, as the middle class, are no longer singled out in losing significant amounts of money. The downside, of course, is that they're not YOLOing in, even though it feels like a YOLO to us. To them, it's chump change. It's $3 million, which means they'll never learn. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe it's for the best that they lose all their day money because they're not smart enough to be a little bit more methodical about taking profits. And that's why I get concerned with someone like Floyd Mayweather trying to fight in Dubai, because they didn't think about profits, taking profits. You don't need to necessarily sit on this over here. So a lot of people were damaged by this, is my point. It wasn't just middle class people. That's what this article said. It wasn't just middle class people. A lot of people were, celebrities alike. And I think it's going to cause some calls for regulation. And people believe regulation is a good thing. We just want smart regulation. We don't want it to act like the stock market. That's what they want to do because that's all they know. That's not what we need. What we need is smart regulation. What we should be doing is we should disallow situations like this where this Do Kwon idiot is allowed to just make a transaction without checking with the investors. He should be required to check with all investors and say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What's the benefit to you? Are we okay with this? And then tell us how we're going to do it, and then execute based on what the investors say. If the investors say, no, it's too risky, then he doesn't go. And he tells BlackRock and Citadel to kick rocks. That's not what happened here. And he wouldn't want that because it takes away control from him. But these investments, these tokens, don't understand the investors are their boss. They don't understand that because nobody's ever held them accountable. And just for the record, I never invested in anything Terra because I didn't believe in it. I didn't see any. It had fundamentals, but I didn't see anything that would be worth my time to even cover. It felt like just, hey, we're here. We got a stable coin too. You don't have to just go USDT Tether. We can do it too, and we're popular too, and we got do. And then, of course, the Luna token might as well be the next coming of Seifu with the car salesman. In how it was presented, I didn't believe in anything it was doing. It felt like garbage to me. That's why I never invested in any of that. And I say that as somebody who has invested. I had like $1 or $2 just to watch movement in Seifu. I was willing to give them $1. I wasn't willing to give these jokers $1 at all because I didn't feel confident in it. But that took looking at it for weeks and just seeing, what do you offer? What do you bring to the table? And there was nothing I could see anyway, except an attempt to try to compete with Tether, and a piss poor one at that, because they didn't do anything, in my opinion, that convinced me that they were better than Tether at all. That's fine. Other people saw something I didn't see. Nobody was able to convince me to my satisfaction of why I should invest money in this garbage, and so I didn't. So no, I never held a bag of Tether ever, UST, Luna, none of it. Didn't believe in it. I felt like I didn't think it was a scam. I just felt like it didn't do anything. What does this do? And if you're not doing anything, I might as well invest in SHIB because it doesn't do anything. I knew it had a blockchain. That's cool, but I mean, Avalanche has a blockchain. Polygon has a blockchain. Who cares? There's Dogecoin has a blockchain. Who cares? What do you bring to the table different than any other token I can invest in? You got to stand out. That's the reason I don't invest in Doge either, because it doesn't do anything that stands out in the crowd. I need ones that stand out. You're doing something that's changing the game. You're not just following the leader of everybody else. You're trying to change the game and redefine cryptocurrency and take us to this next level and protect us from idiots like this dude over here. Those are the ones that are getting my money. So for me, I don't know. I felt like it is what it is. I don't like that people lost so much money. A lot of people lost money. I don't like the suicide calls. I don't like the murder calls. I don't like the freakouts. I don't like the frustration. I don't like the upsetness. I don't like any of it. I don't like people saying, We're going to be homeless because of this, because I keep telling people, please stop YOLOing into projects. I don't like seeing, there was this one guy, he said, I don't even know how I'm going to talk to my wife. And then somebody else said, told my wife, and she made me pancakes deep, deep. And then I sent him a picture of Prince holding the pancakes from his Breakfast Can Wait album. There's so many people that just YOLO'd into this garbage, and I really don't know why. It didn't do anything, and I can only speculate greed. They saw the green candle, they FOMO'd into the damn thing. This is what happens, man. You got to take it on the chin and say, you know what? I made a stupid decision. And I can only hope that some of these people, as I interact on social media and via my listeners, some of these people will come to my show and they'll listen when they hear me say these things. And sometimes, and maybe ask me, like before you're about to get into something, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm happy to take a quick look at it, swag. If you ask, I'm not going to do it off my own if I think there's garbage. But if somebody wanted me to do it, I would gladly do it and just let you know what I think. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean you don't act. You might still say, I'm a gambler, I'm going to go after it anyway. Great. But at least have somebody, a second set of eyes, take a look at it, see what they think, see if it's worth the hype, see if it's worth the money, or it's just, from my opinion, it's a waste of your time. That's how I feel about that. That's all I got there. I have to go get ready for the Triad member stream. Triad members are on a different tool. We don't use YouTube for that because we are special, our Triad members. They get a special studio, and that's where I'm about to go next. So that's all I have, is just to give you this update about BlackRock and Citadel. I do encourage you to check out, do some Google searches about BlackRock and Citadel and how they've been involved in the past in different things and just how deep they are in U.S. society. And it's going to shock you with what you see. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, suggestions, please leave them below. Let us know how we're doing. YouTube keeps giving us weird errors. So if you're getting a weird experience, please blame YouTube, because no matter what we do, we have everything exactly the way they told us. And according to our preview, everything is perfect. If you are getting those errors, we do apologize. I can 100% assure you it's a YouTube issue that I'm not able to resolve with them yet, but we continue to work on it because we do want to continue doing lives where we can. As I said, Triad members get a different studio where we don't have this garbage because that platform is perfect. It does a great thing. Anyway, that's all I got for you. See you guys. I'm going to dial out and go to the good studio, Lollipop.